So I will start my lecture now. Now today topic is approach to a case of hemolytic anemia. So we will briefly see how to when a patient of hemolytic anemia present in our department, how to approach, what tests will you advise, and how to reach a diagnosis, and how will you manage this. Initially, I will explain basically very briefly about all the hemoglobinopathies, and try to make you aware about all the causes of hemolytic anemia. Then in a flow diagram, we will see the approach. So what is hemolytic anemia? Hemolytic anemia basically means it is a anemia due to the increased destruction of RBC. All of us are aware that the RBC lifespan is around 110 to 120 days. But now if it is lifespan is decreased due to any reason, either it is the defect in the RBC or the some other issue which lead to the red cell hemolysis, then will lead to hemolytic anemia, means the increased destruction. So we can broadly classify either it is a intracorpuscular inside the blood vessels hemolysis, or it is outside the blood vessel hemolysis, or it is either we can classify inherited or acquired. Means if it runs in the family, then it is the inherited, which is mainly true for the hemoglobinopathies, and acquired, in which there is no family history, but still we are facing with the hemolytic anemia. Mainly it applies to the most immune hemolytic anemias and the blood transfusion, etc. We can also classify as acute or chronic. Acute means patient doesn't have any history of the hemolysis, suddenly present with the sign and symptoms of the hemolytic anemia. Maybe like we have seen in the mismatched blood transfusions and after some infections. Chronic hemolytic anemia mainly seen in the inherited disorders. Lastly is the immune or non-immune. We have already discussed this. Now this is the basically classification showing the causes of the all the type of the hemolytic anemia. Means it can be the non-immune causes, in which will include the hereditary, in which due to the enzyme deficiency, G6PD, pyruvate kinase deficiency, hemoglobinopathy, sickle cell disease, thalassemia, unstable hemoglobins, or the membrane hereditary spherocytosis, leptocytosis, and the stomatocytosis. Acquired non-immune causes means there is no immune system involved, but still the patient can present with the evidence of hemolysis. Mainly we are seen in the chronic liver disease, patient with the hypersplenism, splenomegaly leading to the pancytopenia or the hemolysis. We are seeing in the severe sepsis, in which the malaria, clostridium is the we are the usually seen in our clinical practice. Oxidant regents, mainly the drug induced, mainly seen in the G6PD deficiency. Infusion of the some saline, and the microangiopathic hemolytic anemia. This is the basically the usually the life threatening. TTP means the thrombotic thrombocytopenic purpura, and the hemolytic uremic syndrome, in which the patient present with the massive hemolysis, may or may not associated with the renal failure, or it requires our urgent attention and emergency measures, otherwise we will lose the patients. And the some immune causes, in which the maybe the warm autoimmune hemolytic anemia. Warm because in this the antibody acts only at the room temperature, like the 37 degrees centigrade. Cold, in which the antibodies doesn't react at this temperature, it usually react at the lower temperature, that is the 4 degrees centigrade. Maybe the drug induced immune hemolysis. There are the various drugs which when we give into the patient can lead to immune reaction and can lead to the hemolytic events. We have already discussed causes of the hemolysis, the ABO blood mismatch, paroxysmal cold hemoglobinuria, nocturnal hemoglobinuria, cold agglutinin, in which usually the antibody reacts at the 4 degrees centigrade. If you raise the temperature of the serum sample at 37 degree, these antibodies won't react. Then the intravenous infusion, like we are always seen in the Rh negative mother, and Rh, if there is a baby, mother is Rh negative, but the baby is Rh positive, then it can lead to hemolysis. Then what will happen if there is an hemolysis occurs? You always remember hemolysis means destruction of RBC. Destruction of RBC means presence of anemia. But type of anemia, it is normocytic normochromic anemia. You always remember normocytic normochromic anemia, pure hemolytic anemia. Whenever there is an anemia, body try to compensate for it. So there will be the increased RBC production by the bone marrow. If it is the persistent chronic hemolytic anemia, these bone marrow spaces widen. Then when the RBC is lyzed, it will lead to the increase, basically release of the RBC content like the bilirubin, formation of these type of this. And then there will be the changes in the RBC morphology changes because the increased production by the bone marrow. So what will happen if there is a release of the hemoglobin, into the blood, then it will lead to the decreased hematocrit. The body, if the bone marrow is basically making the more and more RBC, then it will lead to the increased reticulocyte count in the body. Normal is the 2 to 6% or 1 to 2%. Then if it is increased, then it will, we are making sure of we are dealing in some pattern of hemolysis. Whenever there is an increased RBC turnover, there is an always increased LDH. We are usually seeing on the patients, but there are the other causes of the LDH besides the hemolytic anemia. So alone the basis of increased LDH, you can't make the diagnosis. Release of the bilirubin, then the formation of the indirect basically increased indirect bilirubin in the case of hemolysis. This hemoglobin binds with the haptoglobin and excreted into urine. If there is more hemoglobin in the serum, then it will lead to decreased hepatoglobin. If there is an intravascular hemolysis, intravascular means inside the blood vessels, then it will release the hemoglobin into the peripheral, into the blood. It lead to the hemoglobinemia. When you take out the sample, serum is separated. Serum is the pink in the color. And after all, this hemoglobin is excreted into the urine. It will lead to the hemoglobinuria into the urinary tract. RBC morphology changes we will discuss according to the causes. Either we can see the spherocytes, cystocytes, white cells. We will discuss one by one. All of you remember, this is the normal peripheral blood smear in which these are the RBC and the 1/3 is the central pillar. Size of the RBC are almost equal to the small lymphocytes. So if you remember this pattern, then you can appreciate the what is the spherocytes, and it is not the RBC shape is never the it is not spherical in our body. So what is the now we will discuss one by one. First of all, we will discuss the membrane disorders, in which we will discuss the hereditary spherocytosis, in which the RBC become the spherical in the shape. It lead to the decreased deformability of the cell, increased hemolysis, and it is diagnosed by the increased osmotic fragility. Just imagine, these are the more sphere as compared to normal RBC. This is the typical picture of the hereditary spherocytosis. Remember, whenever there is an extravascular hemolysis, like mostly seen in the hemoglobinopathy, there will be the splenomegaly, because it is the site of destruction for this RBC. So the finding of splenomegaly, jaundice and anemia, it is the classical triad for the hemolytic anemia. Then how will you diagnose this spherocytosis? By the osmotic fragility test, which is increased in hereditary spherocytosis. This is the hereditary leptocytosis, in which you can say they are the elliptical in the shape. So these are the cannot transverse the capillary more often, and it can lead to destruction into the spleen. This is the stomatocyte, like the mouth-like opening. Instead of the central, which is the spherical central palate, it is the shape like this. All of these are the basically spleen is the site of destruction. These type of the abnormal RBC. That's why it lead to the splenomegaly. This is the enzyme deficiency, G6PD deficiency, and the pyruvate kinase deficiency. You just should be aware what are the causes of this. So what will happen if there is a G6PD deficiency, and why it is important for the physician? If there is a lack of the G6PD, it lead to the hemolysis whenever there is an oxidative stress, may be present in infections and the medications. So in our emergency, you should remember some drugs which can lead to G6PD deficiency. Now we are treating the malarial patients. In the malarial patients, you have to treat with the primaquine in the Vivax, because you have to radical cure. Because exoerythrocytic phase you have to cure. But if the patient is G6PD deficiency, you can't give this drug, because it can lead to the basically it can lead to the hemolysis. So you have to be the test before prescribing the primaquine. Same if you give the sulfonamides, if you give the cotrimazole, you have to be sure the patient is not G6PD deficiency, and you have to go for this test before prescribing these drugs. And this is the typical picture in the G6PD, where is the bite and the blister cells are present. Like the RBC is bited on the one end. Then we will briefly discuss hemoglobinopathy, in which we are mainly concerned about the thalassemia and the sickle cell disease, which are usually seen in our country. India is the thalassemia capital. We have so many patients of the thalassemia. Now, initially there was no national program for this thalassemia, but now we have the program for this anemia, or all the antenatal mothers, they are the routinely screened for the thalassemia at the time of pregnancy. So we can easily diagnose whether thalassemia minor, major, or intermediate. So you have to remember it can lead to the basically significant morbidity over the family if it is thalassemia major baby arrives in the family. This is the just statistical figures. What will happen in the thalassemia syndrome? There is a formation of basically there is a defect in the globulin part of the hemoglobin. It can be alpha thalassemia if there is a defect in the alpha chain, beta thalassemia if there is a defect in beta chain. It can be major, or it can be minor, or it can be intermediate. Major means severe, because both the parents are suffering from the thalassemia, and it can lead to the both carrier gene, and it can lead to the severe. It means the patient is always transfusion dependent, and usually it is not compatible with the basically life in the after the second decade, until unless it is the repeatedly given by the multiple blood transfusion, iron chelation. Still they are facing lot of difficulties. Beta thalassemia manner, usually they are the symptomatic. These are the patients we have to focus, because if we diagnose this patient, like the mother comes with the beta diagnosed as the beta thalassemia minor, and then you have to test the husband. Husband is normal, then maybe the baby will be have the chances of having the only beta thalassemia minor, sorry. But if the husband is also suffering from the beta thalassemia minor, then the chances of major is very high. So you have to go for the screening at around 18 to 20 weeks, whether you are suffering from 13 to 40 weeks by the amniocentesis, whether you are dealing with the thalassemia major and or minor, so that couple can decide about their pregnancy. This is again the alpha thalassemia. In the alpha thalassemia, it is usually lethal in the uterus if it is homozygous. What will happen if there is an hemolysis due to the thalassemia? You can see there is this is the normal. This is the beta thalassemia. Whenever there is an basically hemolysis, it can lead to the more and more RBC production into the bone marrow. If there is a more and more RBC production into the bone marrow, there will be the skeletal changes. You can see the widened diploic space in the skeletal, and the multiple other even in the mandible. You can say observe the bony changes in the thalassemia, because they will lead to the marrow expansion. Now these RBC will release into the circulation, identified as foreign by our spleen. Then it will lead to the extracellular hemolysis, lead to the splenomegaly. Of course, anemia, jaundice will be there, increased LDH will be there. What will happen? This more and more RBC will be there. What are the other side effects? It will lead to the iron deposition into the liver, heart, which can lead to the secondary hemochromatosis and over the changes in the heart, even in the pancreas, and even in the pancreas. Ultimately, it is a vicious cycle which is going again and again, and you can see any of the complication in these patients. Usually we have already discussed, mostly present with the jaundice, symptom and signs of the anemia like the fatigue, pallor, dyspnea, and if it is the inherited measure, mainly the delayed growth and the puberty and the skeletal growth, hepatomegaly, splenomegaly. Now this is the basically skull appearance in the case of the thalassemia, in which you can observe the widened diploic space, and due to this, and it is the hair on end appearance or the crewcut appearance. This is the typical picture in the thalassemia major. Now the peripheral blood smear increased red cell production by the bone marrow to mark many changes in the size and the shape, poikilocytosis and isocytosis. You can observe then the nucleated RBC, because these are the released into the bone marrow. These are also called the target cells. You can again observe these target cells because they are the nucleated RBC. You can observe the basophilic stippling in this thalassemia. or of course there will be the increased reticulocyte, which can be demonstrated by the methylene blue stain. So what will the finding? Anemia, jaundice, reticulocytosis, hepatosplenomegaly, skeletal deformities in the peripheral smear, microcytes, microcytic hypochromic, presence of target cell, nucleated cell, or basophilic stippling. That make your diagnosis very near you are dealing with a case of thalassemia. Then the confirmatory test by the HB electrophoresis. You can see if it is an unaffected, most of the hemoglobin is the hemoglobin A, very less is the hemoglobin A2 and the hemoglobin F. But in the minor, hemoglobin A is the major component, but HbA2 increased and the HbF also increased. And in the major, it is the HbA is 1. Hemoglobin A, adult hemoglobin is reduced. HbF take over the capacity, and it has the binding capacity for the oxygen. So it is usually have the patient present with the hypoxia and the this type of issue. This is the graphatical present in which the thalassemia basically minor, in which you can say the HbA2 peak is increased. This is the HbA2 peak increase and HbF is increased. This is the typical graph you will see in the patients of thalassemia. How will you manage? Of course, you have to manage the anemia. Means you have to repeatedly given the packed cell volume in this patient at the regular intervals, and or if there is you are giving the regular blood transfusion, ultimately it can lead to the basically increased ferritin level. Then you have to prescribe the chelation therapy, either oral or either intravenous. Or late now the stem cell therapy and the bone marrow transplantation, still trials are going on the gene therapy, but still we didn't get success in this patient, in these type of the patients. Now what will happen in the sickle cell anemia? Remember, sickle cell means it is become the sickle shape. It is very hard. It cannot traverse towards the smaller capillary. This is the normal RBC. Just remember, this is the normal flow can occur easily. But if there is a sickle cell, it cannot pass through the flow. So it will be flow. This will be stick into the small capillaries. So no blood to the tissue, and patient tissue will face the hypoxic signs. So we are facing with the so many complications due to this sickle cell anemia. This is the typical sickle cell you will get into the peripheral blood. This is the normal and these are the sickle. The number of the sickle cell depend upon whether you are dealing with the heterozygous and homozygous. This is the again picture of the sickle cell peripheral blood smear. So what can be the complications? We all know it will block the smaller vessels. So what will happen? Anemia, of course. It will lead to the hypoxia. So the pain episodes. Maybe they lead to the stroke, renal failure. Like just if there is a small vessel, or these are the very common basically presentation of these type of patient. Dactylitis means inflammation and the inflammation of basically obstruction to the blood flow into the smaller vessels of the fingers, and it can lead to this type of swellings. This is a very painful because they are experiencing the hypoxia. So you have to hydrate the patient. You have give the normal PCV so that the normal peripheral blood cell can go inside the blood and it can provide the oxygen concentration towards these issues. And the acute chest syndrome, it feels like the patient is having the blockage in the pulmonary capillaries, and it will lead to the acute chest because they are experiencing the hypoxia. So again, you have to give the hydrate the patient, you have to give the PCV to the patient, and you have to give the oxygen. These are the basically understand this. Now we are focusing mainly upon the intravascular hemolysis. Intravascular, mainly the vascular abnormalities we have already discussed. Renal lesion, malignant hypertension, it can lead to the massive hemolysis, preeclampsia, or some of these vasculitis for the MBBS it is not so important. But you have to remember that DIC, abruptio placentae, it can lead to the hemolytic episode in these type of the patients, and you should be aware about, because they are usually associated with the renal failure also, and they are the life-threatening emergencies that you have to act very fast. These are the situation where the liver cell disorder in which the hemolysis can occur, but the typical finding is the spur cell. You can see the spurs. Now, my few slides over the immune hemolytic anemia means they are not basically present from the birth. They are acquired disorders due to some reasons, either maybe drug, maybe infections, or something else. but it is due to acquired in disorders, and RBC can lies due to the presence of our immune system. So all of these required antigen antibody reactions. Type of reactions depend upon class of antibody, number and the spacing of antigenic sites, availability of complement, temperature, and how effective the our reticuloendothelial cells. Like the drug related hemolysis. In the drug related hemolysis, you have to remember this. These are the mainly drugs which can lead to hemolysis in a normal patients. Quinine, quinidine, isoniazid, penicillin, cephalosporin, methyl dopa, procainamide or ibuprofen. But believe me, we are seeing the cases of this hemolysis due to these drugs. Stop the drug, give steroid for few days, and patient will be all right. Then all of you are aware about this hemolytic transfusion reaction. If you are giving the hemolytic transfusion, you are giving the mismatched blood transfusion by mistake, and very rare now, but still it can be. We are usually matching the both AB, O, or positive or negative. No matter. Sometimes it is very rarely it happens. Now it is not usually occur, but it can be three types: immediate intravascular hemolysis, slow, or delayed. This is the typical presentation. Normal, usually if you give a blood, it will stay like this. Surviving cell weak post transfusion. If there is an immediate hemolysis, it will occur when the major APO compatibility. Slow, it can up to the 2 weeks, maybe up to 6 weeks. So whenever a patient of hemolysis comes to you, don't forget to take the history of blood transfusion. Always check ABO or RH compatibility. If needed, if there is a history of the previous mismatched transfusion, test for the donor recipient always in, and go for the Coombs test. This is the hemolytic disease in which the RH incompatibility is in. I will not discuss in this because it is already discussed in gynae for you. This is again the warm antibody and the cold antibody we have already discussed. My main focus will be how to approach these cases. This is the paroxysmal nocturnal hemoglobinuria in which there is a complement mediated. There is some deficiency of the protein. Now this is the basically program. I will spend 3 to 4 minutes over here, and my lecture will be finished in another 10 minutes. So please don't go. Whenever you see a case of hemolytic anemia, how will you diagnose this case of hemolytic anemia? Hemolytic anemia means destruction of RBC, shortened lifespan, means anemia, release of heme part into the body to increase serum bilirubin. Increase serum bilirubin. The body will react for this anemia. Increased LDH. This is a compensatory mechanism. And after that, this hemoglobin, if released into the vessel, like mainly in the intravascular hemolysis, then haptoglobin bind with this hemoglobin and will excrete this hemoglobin into urine, means decreased haptoglobin. Sometimes if the capacity increase, hemoglobinemia, later on lead to hemoglobinuria. But all this decreased haptoglobin, hemoglobinemia, hemoglobinuria occur only into the intravascular hemolysis. If there is an extravascular hemolysis, spleen is the main site, splenomegaly. Sometimes hepatomegaly. Hepatosplenomegaly, it is the site of extravascular hemolysis. So these are the main difference whether you are dealing with the intravascular or whether you are dealing with the extravascular, clinically or by basically testing. Now you are sure about it, you are dealing with the some type of the hemolysis, then you have to decide what can be the possible causes of hemolysis. So think about it, whether it is inside the RBC, then membrane defect, spherocytosis, elliptocytosis, stomatocytosis, enzyme defect, pyruvate kinase, G6PD deficiency. G6PD deficiency important for us because you have to give some drugs. So you have to avoid primaquine in G6PD deficiency. You have to avoid basically sulfonamides in G6PD deficiency. Then the hemoglobinopathy, mainly our India, thalassemia and sickle cell anemia. Thalassemia, history of repeated blood transfusion is very important. Family history is important, and patient will give history of the some iron chelating history also. Sickle cell anemia, Patient will give you to the acute pain episodes, suddenly, mainly in the chest, mainly giving the pain and the swelling in the fingers, suggestive of dactylitis. But remember, in this sickle cell anemia, autosplenectomy occurs due to the repeated splenic infarction. So you cannot palpate spleen. This is the only hemolytic anemia in which there will be no splenomegaly. Remember, chronic hemolytic anemia, no spleen, only sickle cell anemia. Not due to the sickle cell are not destroyed here. It is due to the autosplenectomy. So you have to see the findings in the peripheral blood smear, hereditary finding into the peripheral blood smear. Now, if it is an outside red blood cell, describe whether it is an autoimmune or non-immune. Non-immune hypersplenism, splenomegaly lead due to any reason can lead to hypersplenism. Liver disorder, alcoholic liver disease, some disease due to any reason can lead to hemolysis. Drugs, always remember quinidine, isoniazid, remember about this. Paroxysmal nocturnal hemoglobinuria, CD55, CD59 are deficit lead to the complement mediated, basically lead to the destruction of the RBC. These patients usually present with either the aplastic crisis, means the no bone marrow, or the thrombotic episodes. Infection and the toxin. In our clinical practice, malaria and the Clostridium is very common. In the toxins, snake bite. Sometimes after snake bite, you will see lot of hemolysis. So toxins you cannot forget. Then some fragmentation syndrome in which the DIC, TTP, thrombotic thrombocytopenic purpura, hemolytic purpura, drug induced, they are very important. Of course, we are seeing the lot of cases of the prosthetic heart valve. These prosthetic heart valve, they are the mechanical heart valve. Whenever RBC passes through it, it can lead to destruction of the RBC. So some patient, these patients present with the hemolytic syndrome. So you, and if there is an autoimmune may be due to any reason, maybe drug, maybe some other viral infections, like the hepatitis C, chlamydia, mycoplasma, maybe some autoimmune disorders like the SLE. We are very frequently observing in the SLE patient present with the autoimmune hemolytic anemia. Malignancies, mainly the lymphoma and the chronic lymphocytic leukemia is the very common finding in which the cold agglutinin test will be there. And you cannot forget about the acute hemolysis after the blood transfusion, and again after the due to some drugs. So this is the how will you approach, take the history about all these causes. Means first of you diagnose whether you are dealing with the hemolytic anemia, family history, drug history, history of infections, history of blood transfusions, history of pregnancy, accelerated hypertension, prosthetic heart valve, and the family history in all these are very important. Then my last slide is, now this is the basically increased reticulocyte count, increase LDH, haptoglobin we have already discussed, just cystocytes, microangiopathic anemia, this type of anemia. Spherocytes you will see like this. Sickle cell you will see this. PNH normal RBC, but hemolysis will be thin. Spur or Burr cell you will see in the liver cell. Target cell or thalassemia you can see in basically in the target cell, mainly in the thalassemia. Hinge body mainly in the autoimmune organism. If you find the like that, this is the Plasmodium vivax, or these are the type of the organism toxic granulation. Always the history of the acute infection. You will be able to make your diagnosis by history and the clinical examination. And of course, if you are suspecting some specific test for thalassemia, order HB electrophoresis. For the sickle cell anemia, order HB electrophoresis. First of all, in the hemolytic anemia, peripheral blood smear is very important. You can make your diagnosis on the basis of peripheral blood smear, spherocytosis, eleptocytosis, stomatocytosis. In thalassemia, microcytic hypochromic, target cells, target cell increase reticulocyte count. In the sickle cell, you will be seeing the sickle cell, and then the fragmented RBC will be seen. All these type of these oxidative stress, microangiopathic hemolytic anemia. And if you are seeing the toxic granulations and the intravascular anemia, you can also due to the infections basically. Then the specific investigation for spherocytosis, osmotic fragility test you will order. Sickle cell thalassemia, you will order the HB electrophoresis test. Liver disorder, you can see the LFT and all these things. And for this Autoimmune, you can go for the Coombs test, direct or indirect. Then according to the disease identified, you can basically order your treatment. Thalassemia, blood transfusion. Sickle cell, blood transfusion. And if there is an autoimmune disorder, give the steroid. If the life-threatening emergency, give the IV immunoglobulins. So you have to make sure how to approach a case of hemolytic anemia. Take proper history, do relevant investigations, and make your diagnosis and treat accordingly. That's all about my lecture. You can basically post in the chat box if you want to ask anything. I'm not able to see any questions from any of the audience. If you are understood, so may I leave now? Yeah, I have taken only 30 points because I know attention span is only 20 to 30 minutes for you. Okay, if there is no other questions, then I am leaving this lecture. If you have still any query, you can personally contact me. Thank you very much, students, for giving attention to me. Thank you.